Good morning to everyone. We are going to talk about accounting for assets, elaborated in your course manual in the chapter 5. I think I'm going to talk to this particular group the first time. This is B1 and B2. Of course, you guys had the opportunity of listening to different lecturers and already learned some other different aspects of financial accounting. Rather, you would have already realized that it is an extension of the knowledge that you carried from advanced level, right? But here we go into detail and try to explain you the things from different perspectives in such a manner which enable you guys to engage in accounting in different forms, such as preparation of financial statements, presentation of financial statements, and decision making in accounting and finance. So those are the broader areas of learning. Since the instruction is in English medium, I continue in talking in English. But if you have any requests, one of my problems is I just speak a little bit faster. Now I purposely reduce it. However it is, you better stop me and ask questions in case if you do not understand, or if you have any questions or anything to clarify further, feel free to ask. Disturb me at any point in time. You are free to unmute your mic and talk, or write your question in the chat box, because sometimes chat box I may not see very often. But anyway, you better interact with the discussion. And one of the constraints that we come across because of online teaching is, though it's called online teaching, it's not really online teaching. We say something by using virtual platforms and claim that this is online teaching and online learning. It's not. It's different environments should be arranged whereby you guys must be able to interact very actively. But this is something what I perceive as an alternative for the time being, since we are not in a position to physically meet each other. But I hope things or the arrangements would be made by the university authorities in the near future, whereby you guys can come to the university and resume your studies in a normal manner. Right. A1 and A2, no, they have a lecture, so just ask them to contact the coordinator, that is Udeshant sir. There is a problem with A1 and A2 group always, because its link is not working sometimes. However, Udeshant sir will make the arrangements. I think today, just pass the message to them to contact Udeshant sir or Kingsley sir. Right. Accounting for assets, it's not a big deal. Why? Already you have been dealing with assets and liabilities throughout your accounting career. However, we try to be very specific with regard to assets. Different types of assets would be there. Different types of classifications may be there. So no matter whether it is a different type of classification or type of assets, we need to know and we need to gather knowledge or competencies, especially in three major areas pertaining to assets, not only pertaining to assets, assets and liabilities. So they are the key elements of an entity. Number one is its definition and recognition. Actually, learning, no matter what subject it is, learning really connects to the definition. We need to define what it is. Definition varies from place to place, context to context. So likewise, the same terms may be used, but the definition may vary. So therefore, definitions matter. Based on the definitions, we have to recognize assets. I think the word recognition must have been already understood by you guys very well. But remember that, especially in management studies, commerce, accounting, finance, or any other the social subjects, lots of generally used terminologies are used in these subjects with a different meaning, Unlike in the case of natural sciences. In natural sciences, the term used in the natural science and in day-to-day language is the same thing. It does not have two different meanings. But when it comes to social sciences, so especially our subject accounting, lots of general terms are used with slightly modified meaning or only with specific meaning. Good example is recognition. How do you recognize something? Recognition has a general meaning. Recognition is simple identification of something distinctively from another. If you can recognize one of your friends when he or she is coming or just staying within a crowd, maybe from a distance, that's also recognition. Then you say, oh yeah, I recognized you. I know you. I can recognize whether something included in this or that when things are mixed. I'm good at recognizing colors because do you know that color blindness is there? Then you can say that no, I don't have any color blindness. I can recognize everything. Even if you mix things in different colors, I can recognize. Right? So likewise, you can think of all those things, recognition used in day-to-day life or general conversation. But when it comes to accounting, field of accounting, recognition has a specific meaning. It does not limit to simple identification of an item. Of course, in order to recognize even in accounting, you need to first identify through or within the definitions given. And the second step is also needed, without which recognition is not complete. The second step is recognition entails accounting, recording in books of accounts. Is that clear? That's the meaning of recognition. Therefore, in account, this is only in accounting. Huh? Accounting, if you hear the word, if you say that, yes, I recognize something, or asset was recognized, liability was recognized, that means you have already accounted for. You have recorded this thing in the books of account. They are there in your ledger or any other, mainly the ledger based on the double entry system that will be used for the preparation of financial statements later on. So therefore, consequence of a recognition of an asset and liability is the representation in financial statements. That linkage is very important. Okay. So the opposite of recognition is derecognition. Derecognition. We remove it from books of accounts. If you recognize an asset, that will be reflected in your financial statements, reported in your financial statements. The same way, if you derecognize an asset, that means if you reverse the entries from the books, then that item will not appear in the financial statements. That will not be reported. Is that clear to you guys? That is one of the key areas that you have to first think of before talking about assets. That is what we call scope of dealing with assets. I hope it's clear. If it's not clear, please ask. All right. Learning objectives. Define different types of assets. Just see, that's why I just told you, definition matters. So there could be so many other items associated with an entity which look to be an asset, but we are not in a position to recognize them. Therefore, we need to very clearly define what an asset is. These definitions may come with reference to accounting standards or sometimes conceptual framework. There should be clearly identified guidelines. They are there in the conceptual framework for financial reporting or in accounting standards. Explain, that is the action verb, explain. Recognition and measurement. Recognition and measurement of different types of assets. Actually, this recognition and measurement go together in hand. Why? Why do recognition and measurement go together? With the recognition I just told you, recognition links to definition and recognition completes when they are recorded in the books of account. So can you complete the recognition? So how do you record the items? We know that accounting deals with money measurement concept. If any item that cannot be measured in terms of money cannot be recorded or shown in the financial statements or books of account. So therefore, recognition requires to refer to the definition and required to record it. Therefore, recording is not possible without measuring. So that you have to understand. So the recognition completes only the measurements takes place. Then why are they talked separately? What is the need, or mainly the need to separately identify these things? There would be some items, they may meet the definition and you will have opportunity, or the entity is in a position to recognize some assets, but due to some technical problems, you will not be able to measure it, right? Even if you comply with the definition and the basic qualities or aspects of an item that could be recognized as an asset, but still there will be a room left in which you will not be able to measure. If that's the case, you can't recognize. So that's the reason why measurement has been separately discussed. Third learning outcome is classify. You have to classify items. How do you classify? In different ways. There is no hard and fast rule. But as far as accounting standards are concerned, you have to classify assets in two different ways. Number one, the classification between current and non-current. Current assets and non-current. Why? To implement, like to comply with the going concern assumption. To comply with the going concern assumption. You have learned this thing. Sometimes we call going concern concept. Actually, it is an assumption. When we prepare financial statements, we assume that entity will run its operation or cess its operation, will not cess its operation. In other words, it will continue its operation for a foreseeable future time unless it faces something exceptional to cess its operation. So that is an assumption. So therefore, preparation of financial statement for one particular accounting period is just reflection of the status and financial performance for that given period in the long-term journey, which will never end, which will, we assume to never end, right? So it will continue for infinite time period. We assume like this. So what is the result or the contribution or today's picture, that particular time period based on the periodic concept? So in order to comply with this particular assumption, you need only two things. One is current. So what is essentially to be assured that you would survive for today, for the current period of accounting, right? That's needed. That has to be separated from what is needed or what would be dealt with in the longer run. The rest, no matter whether it is for 1, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, or million years, initially you need to make sure that this entity will run for another 1 year. So that is the reason why we have the separate category called current. Current means not the present. The meaning of current in accounting is not the present. Otherwise, the non-current would be future. In that way also you can take it. But the real meaning is current means it keeps on continuing. It's really flowing. It's like current that goes through wires, current that is seen in the water. It continues. That's the idea. It keeps on going. That's there in the process, operating cycle. You may have heard about all those things, right? Operating cycle that is moving. That's why it is called current. Okay, I hope it is clear. No, third outcome. Okay, good question. Okay, I'll come to that one later. Classification is current, non-current. It's not really, in a way, you can argue that yes, that also deals with definition. And another classification is there, that is with respect to different definitions. So you're right, the one who just asked this particular question. These classifications go hand in hand with definitions as well. But so when it comes to definition for different types of assets, this is how an asset is recognized. It would be many, but when it to classification may be done based on these definitions, but with different identity, different classification. For example, I will relate this thing when we go on. Classification between current and non-current. Non-current, we'll discuss later, something. Within non-current, there would be other different definitions, different types of assets. For example, when we take students, the classification. So when we say Sri Lanka, total population, so 22 million, roughly somewhere. So when we think of the population, that is a classification. Total population. It includes everyone. Again, there is a definition for the population as well. But when we just go down step by step and come to university level, university students, then the student population of each university can be separately disclosed. Then student who's studying in accounting degree program, the University of Sejavardhanapura, is not counted and not represented in another student, I mean the student population of another university. You got it? So then students can be classified into different degree programs. And when we take some degree, so our accounting degree program, again, we can classify them into male, females, but all are students. You got it? So both male, female come within the definition of a student, but they are different. Girls and boys, males, female. I hope you understood it. Classification is required to present information in such a manner that would help decision-making purposes or to achieve some specific purposes. That's why whenever we want, we can classify. So that is the reason why nowadays government also plays with this classification game. How? So government took a very bold, nasty, in a way, very stupid decision to ban the importation of chemical fertilizers overnight without knowing the consequences. I think they knew the consequences, but they had some ideas of earning money by importing organic fertilizers or just giving these tenders to their known people, simply bypassing the tender procedures and all those things. These things could be the reasons why they took these decisions, I suppose. However, once they have taken such a decision, what is the decision? Decision is, so chemical fertilizer is harmful for the health. When so are we conscious enough about the health? Are we health conscious? So that's the big question again. Anyway, to great extent, we are not health conscious. It doesn't mean that we should not be. Actually, we need to be highly health conscious. So if you can improve or develop, enhance your health, of course, your quality of human resources would be great. That is something else. Nevertheless, just going back to the point, that is dangerous and harmful for the health. So therefore, we will go for organic fertilizer. Organic fertilizer. They took the decision. Now, later on, they realized the consequence, even so they could not achieve their objective of importing the things as they wanted. So whereas bad things, even Chinese ship, there is another argument, and some nano fertilizer, liquid fertilizer was imported from India. Likewise, so many discussions are there in the society, and many experts and the professionals say that that would negatively affect to the harvester in the next season. So government is in trouble, but the government does not accept that they did a stupid thing, but they want to now reverse it. So now if you reverse the Gazette notification, so it is a shame for them. Like it is something like they came out with a big concept, now they are going to withdraw it. It's really bad for the government. So what the government says even now, after withdrawing it and allowing some private sector organization to import chemical fertilizer, they say no, we are not importing chemical fertilizer. So there are something like feeders for plants. In Sinhala we call, what is the term? So it's not chemical fertilizer. It is some food for plants. In Sinhala, shakarakshaka. Oh, so the chemical something like shakarakshaka, shakahara, something like. So that's a classification. They never say, oh, no, I have not imported the chemical fertilizer. I hope you understand the concept, because these things are seen everywhere. Okay. Okay, I'll explain the things in Sinhala as well. Wait a minute. But is my speed of speech is high. Yeah, so one question has been asked. It means when we classify assets like non-current, current, tangible, intangible, etc., they should be under the definition. Yes, of course, within the definition, even classification. But we do not recognize. Okay, so here again we can learn something very important. Actually, we do not recognize items in the label of non-current assets in the books of accounts. Where we recognize property, plant, and equipments in the books, it becomes a non-current asset just because of the definition given in the LKS 1 presentation of financial statements. It becomes current assets. Inventories, what we recognize is not current assets. We recognize inventories. Inventories fall into the definition of current assets according to LKS. Is that clear? Right. හරි දැන් මම සිංහලෙන් පොඩ්ඩක් පැහැදිලි කරන්නම් මේ උත්තර වෙනකන් කියාගෙන ආවද කියලාත් මතක නැහැ දැන් තලා අදහස් අසලා in bullet points දැන් අපි මේ කතා කරන්නේ accounting for assets ඒවත් තමයි කියන්නේ මොනවද කියන එක වැදගත්ම දේ තමයි definition එක අපි ඒක හඳුනා ගන්න වෙන්නේ definition එකට යටත් හඳුනා ගන්නවා කියලා කියන්නේ පොත්වල රෙකෝඩ් කරන එක මිසක් වෙන එකක් නෙමෙයි. ඒකට පොත්වල රෙකෝඩ් කරන්න බෑ. ඒක මනින්නේ නැතුව. මනින්න වෙන්නේ මූල්‍ය මිනුමට අනුව money measurement. ඒ නිසා තමයි recognition and measurement කියන දෙක එකට යන්නේ. එතකොට අපිට අද accounting for assets කියලා ඉගෙන ගන්න වෙන්නේ වත්කම් වල definition එකයි ඒක පොත්වල රෙකෝඩ් කරන්න පුළුවන්ද කියලා හඳුනා ගැනීමයි. ඒ හඳුනා ගැනීම කරනකොට මෙෂර්මන්ට් එකයි. ඒ වගේම ඒවා තව පොඩි කැලලක් තියෙනවා ඩිස්ක්ලෝස් එළිදරව් කිරීම කියන කාරණා ටික. එතකොට මේවා අපිට අද විශේෂයෙන් දැන් ඔබ අහලා ඇතිනේ වත්කම් පිළිබඳ වත්කම් වැඩිපුර කතා කරන්න සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ වත්කම් වර්ග ගොඩාක් තියෙනවා. ඒවට වෙන වෙනම ඩෙෆිනිෂන්ස් තියෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ ඒවා මූල්‍ය ප්‍රකාශන වල වාර්තා කරන්න ගියාට පස්සේ විවිධ විදියට වර්ගීකරණය කරගන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා. ඒ නිසා තමයි අපේ ලර්නින් අවුට්කම් මේ කොටස ඉවර වුණාට පස්සේ අපිට අවබෝධයක් එන්න ඕනේ මෙන්න මේ ප්‍රධාන කාරණා තුන පිළිබඳව. එකක් තමයි වත්කමක් කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා ඩිෆයින් කරගන්න. පොදුවේ සහ ඒ අයිටම අනුව පොදුවේ වත්කමක් ඩිෆයින් කරගන්න පුළුවන්. මම අර කලින් කිව්වනේ ජනගහණය කිව්වම මිනිස්සු කිව්වම මිනිහාගේ ලක්ෂණ තියෙනවානේ. මිනිහා සතෙකුට වඩා වෙනස් වෙනවා. දෙපා වලින් හිට ගන්නවා. අනිත් සත්තුන්ට හතරක් තිබුණාට ඒගොල්ලන් හතරෙන් ඇවිදින්නේ සමහර අය දෙපා වලින් යන්නේ පාවිච්චි කරනවා වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒතර ඩෙෆිනිෂන් එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒතකොට මිනිහා කියන ඩෙෆිනිෂන් එකට තව ඩෙෆිනිෂන් එනවානේ. නේද? මට මිනිහා විදිහට වැඩ කරන්නේ නැතුවමත් ඒ ඩෙෆිනිෂන් නේද? සත්තු විදිහට හැසිරෙන වෙලාවල් තියෙන මිනිස්සුනේ. ඒතකොට මිනිහා කියන්න පුළුවන් ද වැරදිද කියන ප්‍රශ්නේ අහන්න පුළුවන්. මොකද මිනිහා අතර ගැහණිත් පිරිමු නේ. ඒත් මිනිස්සුනේ. දැන් පැහැදිලි නේද? එතකොට ප්‍රධාන definition එකක් ඇතුලේ sub definitions එන්න පුළුවන්. definitions එන්න. assets ඇතුලේ තව assets එන්න පුළුවන්. ඒතකොට ඒක අවශ්‍යතාවයක්. ඇයි ගොඩක් assets අපි deal කරන නිසා. දෙක. ඔය recognition කියන්නේ explain පැහැදිලි කරන්න ඕනේ මේ recognition measurement කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? ඒක තමයි සරලව කිව්වේ. මේ දෙක එකට යන්නේ recognition කියන එකේ තේරුම පොත්වල ලියන එක. පොත්වල ලියන එක නිකන් අර වාක්‍ය ලියන එක නෙමෙයි. accounting මූල ධර්ම වලට අනුව so that is the double entry system. Based on the double entry system we have to record them in the books of accounts. ඒකට ඒ දුස්සටහන් මූල ධර්මයට අනුව අපි පොත්පත්වල වාර්තා කරගන්න එක රෙකෝඩ් කරන එක තමයි recognition කියන්නේ. ඒක කරන්න බෑ මනින්නේ නැතුව. මනින්නේ මූල්‍ය මිනුම්. ඒතර සමහර ඒවා තියෙනවා මනින්න බැරි නිසා recognize කරන්න බැරි වෙන එක. මනින්න බැරි නිසා recognize කරන්න බැරි වෙනවා. උදාහරණයකට ආයතනයක තියෙන හැකියාවන් සමහර හැකියාවන් මනින්න බෑ. Employees' skills cannot be measured in terms of money. මනින්න පුළුවන්. In terms of money we can't. ඒක recognize කරන්න බැරි වෙනවා. දැන් පැහැදිලි නේද? ඉන්නේ කාරණා ටික අපිට පැහැදිලි කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕනේ. තුන්වෙනි එක තමයි ඊට පස්සේ අන්න අර කිව්ව classification. So I hope that it's clear to both who just wanted to have some explanation in Sinhala as well, but I keep the explanation in a very, very slow manner, whereby you can understand. Asset. It directly refers to the definition of IASB conceptual framework, the 2018 one. It has been highly summarized, very simple compared to previous definition. A present economic resource, but it's in a way, when the definition is simple, the interpretation would be very broad. Present economic resource, then you know present, okay, no, everyone knows as of now. Economic resource, what is meant by an economic resource? Economic, it should entail some sort of value. Value should be there. Scarcity should be there. So this could be something that we have learned in economics. Scarcity. Otherwise, it is not going to be an economic resource. Controlled. You know, the control comes with power or ability to do so legally. So that is how the control comes. And now government rules the country. In ruling the country, they can control the other things as well. They sometimes control the judiciary, they control that, and is even human. So people of this country can be controlled, but what they are supposed to do is to rule in a just manner. The control is something connected with power. The entity, you know, as a result of past event. So this is very critical. You can't recognize an asset unless it has already happened. Unless it has already happened. අපි පොරොන්දු වෙන දේවල් asset විදියට ගන්න බෑ. මම හෙට මේක ගෙනල්ලා දෙන්නම් කිව්වට so that is not an asset. අවරු කියනවා දෙයියන් පල්ලා හෙට මම ගෙනල්ලා දෙනවා. දෙයියෝ තල්පත් කරනවා නේද? So in අපි dead sure you know that this person has never ever broken a promise. Therefore you are certain, dead certain that he or she will deliver the promise. But for accounting purposes, you can't recognize that thing as an asset. Even though you would have the access, you would gain the control over that particular item tomorrow, you can't recognize. It has to have happened. Past events. Events include transactions or any other things. The event is a broader definition. It could be anything. Why do we use events? In an organization, there are items which give rise to assets and other things which do not emerge from transactions, such as when we use assets, when we use machines, the value like its physical substances would deteriorate. It goes down. That is an event. Sometimes you sold goods to customers, right? That is a transaction. That customer is bankrupt tomorrow. That is not a transaction. So Sri Lanka is also likely to be bankrupt sometime. We do not know. If a customer is going to be bankrupt, or assume that bankrupt, it is an event, not a transaction. I hope it's clear the difference between event and transaction. So in an organization, both events and transactions are there, which give rise to assets. Classification. Let's see. Of course, classification connects to the definition. Inventories. What is meant by inventory? Cash and cash equivalent. We'll discuss. Financial assets. trade receivables, financial assets which are recognized at fair value through profit and loss statement. So similarly, there is another corresponding financial asset at the recognized at fair value through other comprehensive income. We will discuss all those things later. Just for the time being, think that there are different categories, classification. First classification is current and non-current, current and non-current. Current. Under current assets, different items. Under non-current assets, different items are there. So these are the different types of assets that an entity very often come across, and specific definitions have been given in corresponding accounting standards. Property, plant, and equipment. That's the name. Actually, property, plant, and equipment has lots of assets, land, building, machines, and so on and so forth. But the title given there is a property, plant, and equipment. So property, plant, and equipment for accounting purposes, that particular term should be used only with reference to this particular standard. Outside the standard, you can use your own words. For example, the term fixed asset, sometimes when you go to organization, government entities, capital budgeting, some private sector organization also, when they want to buy machines, they budget, right? How do you call these things? Capital budgeting. If you want to invest in a huge machine and some business proposal, that is called capital budgeting. We never call it as property, plant, and equipment budgeting. But that's the different subject. Okay. And when you go to government entities, capital expenditure and recurrent expenditure, that is for their own purposes, budgeting and spending purposes. I hope it's clear to you. So likewise, all these definitions should be limited to or should be understood within the scope given in each accounting standard. Investment property, we will be discussing. Right of use asset, it's nonetheless the leasing that we called in the past. Now we use the term right of use asset. We get a right to use others' asset. That's the meaning. Biological assets, biological, so it has a biological component. Living things are there. That's why it becomes biological. Maybe animal, plant, products we'll discuss. Intangible, you can't touch. You can't touch. Inventories, already you have learned, so need not to, we are not going to talk about inventories. Why? You have learned these things in advanced level to great extent. Cash and cash equivalent, so that will be discussed on the cash flow statement of the cash flows. But basically, cash, everyone knows about cash. Cash equivalent is something equivalent to cash, but not pure cash. What's the difference? Cash is readily available amounts which are in the form of cash at any time you can pay. Cash equivalent means something, some assets which can be converted to readily available cash either at no cost or at a very insignificant cost. So cash in hand is cash. Cash in current account is cash because you can readily available, because you can draw checks and make the payments. Need not to take money, keep your money in your pocket. Even if you think of digital currencies or digital payments, so that's also cash, except if you maintain or hold cryptocurrencies as an asset, so that the question arises whether it is cash or cash equivalent, because the value fluctuates. In that case, that would be dealt with financial instruments. Later we will discuss. So difficulties arise with regard to that. But if you use other forms of cash, it would be cash. Cash equivalent would be some deposits, term deposits, fixed deposits. So which are cash equivalents, even savings, not readily. I mean, you may argue that that's readily available. Even if you have deposited some money in a savings account, you can take it at any point in time. But what happens when you keep on withdrawing your money, even from the savings account, the banker will reduce the interest. So sometimes the banker will not give you the interest. if you withdraw more times within a given period of time, bank says no. Even though this is a savings account, you have withdrawn several times. I'm not going to pay you interest. So that means so you incur a cost. That's the idea of cash equivalent. No, I did not get the question asked why for the first 3 chapters are mentioned and for the remaining no chapters have been mentioned. You mean in the manual or where? I'm not not sure. But don't worry if something has been just missed out. Like the separation, the learning into chapters, it is You mean to say here? Okay, I got it. Chapter 6, Chapter 7, Chapter 11, and biological asset. Actually, there is no separate chapter in the manual. That is the reason. Even intangible asset, there is no separate chapter in the manual. I suppose that is the reason, because this intangible asset will be discussed in detail in the second year in advanced financial accounting and reporting. That's the reason. Even intangibles will be there. Inventory we are not going to discuss. And investment in subsidiaries will be a subject of another, the content of another subject. So that's the reason. That's the reason. Only these 3 areas are there in your chapters. But example, this is not a real example. I just showing you how entities classify them. The balance sheet, on the face of a balance sheet, they classify into current and non-current. All are assets. Under non-current assets, you see, in the advanced level, when we dealt with non-current assets, 99% you dealt with property, plant, and equipment. Nothing else. But here, now you need to learn about other items. Investment properties, intangible assets, biological assets, right of use assets, investment in subsidiaries, likewise, so on and so forth. You can see a long list. Not only that particular list, even within that list, explanatory notes are also provided. If you go to that particular note, you get details, further details about each item. The current assets, see, inventories, trade, all those things, so you have already learned, just to show you how they are presented. So therefore, when you prepare financial statements, your major responsibility is to classify them into current and non-current. Within each current and non-current categories, specific items have to be mentioned in line or in accordance with respective accounting standards. So if you can do that, that means you have prepared a very good set of financial statements. You have presented financial information in a quality manner. Property, plant, and equipment. Okay. Do you have any question before talking about property, plant? Already you have learned this thing, but I will explain a little bit more this. No question, right? So just give me 1 minute to break the monotonous. Need to take some drink. 1 minute. Give me a minute. I think it's being recorded. Okay. Property, plant, and equipment. That is something you have already mastered it. I'm sorry that little, not an accident, but rather mine accident. Wheel of the chair just ran over my finger. So it's a little bit painful. Anyway, it's all right. So property, plant, and equipment, the number one that you think of when we talk about property, plant, and equipment, it should be tangible. So everyone knows the meaning of tangible, touchable. අල්ලන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නට ඕන. Otherwise, it is not going to be a property, plant, and equipment. And the characteristics of a property, plant, and equipment are like this. How is it defined? They are defined as like items. It could be anything held for use in the production. Then you can understand machines, tools, even buildings, factories, all those things in the use of production, or supply of goods and services. When you supply goods and services, you transport goods and deliver them, even logistic arrangements, stores, that would be then property, plant. So it comes within that particular category. Actually, these things are guidelines for managers or the preparers of financial statements. Think of these things. If your items fall within this category, so it is a property, plant, and equipment. Or for rental to others, so you can rent them outside. Rent, even building can be rented, or land can be rented, machines, equipment can be rented. So you keep it for rental purposes or for administrative purposes as well. So if it does not fall into any of these categories, administrative purposes, that is again office, you know that what is meant by administrative. So that's the broader definition. However it is, even if you use it for these things, they should be expected to be used during more than one period. One period means basically your operating cycle, that is year. Take a small tool that you use to used in production of goods. When goods are produced, you use a particular tool to take it out and place it somewhere. Can we say that that particular tool is used in production? Yes. Therefore, it can be treated as a property, plant, and equipment, but may not be expected to be used for more than one. Maybe only one use, just throw. If that's the case, it would be material, or if it is insignificant, you are not going to recognize. Now you have to understand this. Some items may not be used for a longer period, or within 1 year period. Just expense, that's it. It's not property, plant, and equipment. Even if you expect to use within a short of like operating cycle, it has to be expensed. So already you have learned these things. Property, plant, and equipment are measured, that means or recognized. How? At cost initially. At recognition of an item. Recognition means initially you are bringing the recording item in the books of account. That is the meaning of recognition, or initial recognition. At recognition, initial recognition at cost. You know how to cost, how the cost is ascertained. And the subsequent to the recognition of an item of PPE is measured either depending on the manager's wish, or not yet a pure wish, and the professional judgment. They have the option either to use cost model or revaluation model. What's the difference between cost model and cost? Cost model is a model specified in the standard telling you how the cost should be ascertained, right? So therefore it is nonetheless the cost. But since it is presented as a model, we say that it is a cost model. So by using the cost model, you are going to ascertain the cost. Is that clear? Therefore, cost model asks or the tells you, explains you how to ascertain the cost for that particular purpose. So other than that, the cost is defined. This is the cost of property, plant, and equipment. The revaluation model is also another model. It tells you how to revalue assets. But one thing is important in revaluation. Revaluation is always done. You know that revaluation can be done on frequent, the regular intervals. The demarcation between the revaluation model and cost model are the reference to the measurement basis. You know, you have already learned in the previous sessions in accounting, that is under the conceptual framework. We use in accounting, how many measurement bases are used in broad category? How many measurement bases are used? Yeah, can someone answer? Yeah, quickly. I hope you learned them. Four. You are right. But in fact, there are two. In fact, there are two. Okay, good. I want to mention them. What are they? Cost and the current value. Cost and the current value. Okay. So we have two options. Either to use cost, that is historical cost, or current value. The argument is that historical cost may not be representative as of now due to inflation and changes and adjustments in the capacities of assets over time. It is pretty practical and natural that it would change. So therefore, there is an argument that in order to show the real potential, earning potential of a business, better to move towards the current value, whereas whenever it is possible, use fair value, whatever. So different bases discussed in 4 items, other 3 items represent the current value. So the revaluation model is a representation of current value. Current means as of now. So okay. So here, yeah. So there is one thing I just told you. I just told you that current, the word current in accounting used with the meaning of moving, continuing. But here, I'm sorry, that exception is there. So here current means the present. You see, the same word is used with 2 different meanings. Current assets mean assets which are moving quickly within the operating cycle. Current value is not the value that is being moving. Of course, why we have to go for the current value is in the value of any item is moving, changing. But the current value is the value as of now. It's the fair value in a way, right? Current value is the fair value. Broader meaning is the fair value. I hope you learn the fair value. What's the good proxy for the fair value in this world? Can you find the fair value of anything in this world? Yes? Fair value of something? Where can you find? Yes? Any item? Can we think of the fair value for everything? No. That is one of the dangers in this society. We try to fix the fair value for everything. Where fair value or the value should be referred to commodities, goods and services. If you try to fix the value for fair value for any other things, then you are in trouble. If you try to see the value in love, it's invaluable. There are certain things in this society, when we live in a society, you should never ever think of valuing them. They cannot be valued. Therefore, they should not be quantified. They should not be commodified. we should not try to sell or trade them in the market. But unfortunately, many try to do these things. So that's why and how everything has become a value. Even system, very bad economic system nowadays, what we call neoliberal economic system, really places a value on the human life as well. How? If you are wealthy, your value of your life is very high. If you do not have any place to live in this society, if you are a beggar and you meet with an accident and die, no value, zero. So that's it, right? So this is where our society is moving towards, maybe in the future, unless something dramatically happen, or the people come forward and change the society, not only in Sri Lanka, throughout the world, everywhere it is true. It is more likely you may experience these things in your lifetime, because our lifetime is now going towards the end. You have lots of the spare time to enjoy the life. You would see this, how this division would take place. There would be a huge majority, they do not have any means of living, like beggars, no value, because the economy gives a value, no value. But tiny minority with like gods, you praise them, worship them. So this is how society, anyway. So that is also good for you to understand the meaning of value. So fair value. Fair value should, I just told you, refer to goods and services. What is the best fair value in this world? Yes, you know, you have learned it. That's why I'm asking. I know that you have learned it. Can anybody suggest me the best fair value that you can come across in this world? I'm asking something that you have already learned. I'm not telling that you have learned this thing in this subject or in the degree program, but may have, but for sure, you must have learned this thing in advanced level. Can anybody guess and tell me what is the best fair value in this world? Thirty seconds. It looks like you are struggling to connect it. Have you learned economics? Yeah, fair value for land. From where do you get it? What is fair value? That's what I'm asking. What's the fair value? That is fair value for land is what that you learn. Okay. What is the fair value? But the best proxy for, yeah, when you type this thing in the internet, you would get fair value for land and this. From the internet, it would not be easy to get it from the internet, principal market value. So open market value. Then we need to talk about principal market. Yes, you know. So this is how the fair value is taken. Then principal market has to be defined. Open market value. If you forget about all those things from economics point of view, what is the best indicator of the fair value? It is nothing but the equilibrium price in a perfectly competitive market. Yes, one mentioned the market equilibrium, not the equilibrium in any market. The equilibrium can be found in a monopoly, oligopoly, or any other types of markets. So the practically seen competitive market. The best fair value should be the equilibrium price in a perfectly competitive market. Can you find it? No way. What does it mean? So whatever the fair values that we learn, define, use are not fair, right? So they are proxies of fair. Of course, to some extent, little deviation. If the difference is minimum, it's all right. This is what you learn. In fact, so I'm not going to talk about fair value. You can refer and recall what you learned under the fair value. So here idea is the division is between the current value and the historical value. Since the current value needs to be the fair value, of course, that is the most precise and superior one. That is why the fair value is defined in that way. But we can't get it always, since we do not have such efficient markets are not there. So we have some other options in the revaluation, net present value calculations, net realizable value, and current cost, just to replacement cost, exit prices. Okay. So likewise, you go for some proxies. ඒක වෙනුවට තව එකක් ගන්නෙම තමයි අපි එක එක ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ්ස් වල කියන්නේ. ඒතර cost එක වෙනුවට තව මොකක් හරි value එකක් ගැන කියනවනම් actually the A value එක represent කරන්නේ current value. That means the fair value. I hope it's clear to you. Now, investment property. Here, in accounting, property has a meaning. In day-to-day life, what is the meaning of property? ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ property එක කියලා කිව්වොත් මොනවද? It could be anything, නේ? අතේ තියෙන සල්ලි propertyද? Maybe. Even girlfriend, boyfriend could be a property of the other. So that could be the reason sometimes why so those couples fight each other. So it's a property. If someone else touches or just looks at your property, you get mad. Even either. Sometimes you may treat like that. Day-to-day life property. Okay, someone asked about it, but I'll come to that point later. First, I'll just define this and explain property. Recently enacted Parliament Act. It is an amendment to the Finance Act. ළඟදී මුදල් පනත සංශෝධනය කරානේ. ඒකේ කියනෝනේ අර සල්ලි disclose නොකරපුවා disclose කරොත් 100ක බද්දක් ගහලා තියාගන්න පුළුවන් කියලා property වල. ඒ property එකයි මේකයි දෙකක්. ඒකයි මම මේ කිව්වේ. ඒකෝට අපි මේ තේරුම් ගන්න හැමතිස්සෙම when something is defined, you got to be very careful. මේ property කරගෙන අර පනතට අනුව ගියොත් අමාරු වෙනවා. ඒ පනත බලලා මේ property තේරුම් ගත්තොත් ආය අමාරු වෙනවා. According to that particular act, property includes land, buildings, either completed or in the process of construction, locally located or in abroad, and includes what? Gold, jewelry. So likewise, it goes on. So many other things, precise stones. So that is a property. කියන්නේ ඒගොල්ලන් දැන් දන්නවා කොහෙද බඩු ටික තියෙන්නේ කියලා. ඒ තියෙන එකට property කියලා කියනවා. Even immovable property are there. Gold, jewelry, all those. Right. So actually, it's better to be, like, if you compare these things, question these things, you can easily learn. Now, investment property is mere definition. It is a property, land or building. For what purpose? Held to rental or for capital appreciation or both. And then calling definition එකේ බලන්න. Some rentals to others, right? Rental to others. So if you hold any item to rental to others, it is property, plant and equipment. According to this definition, land, land, building, machines and all. However, since there is a separate standard, that is LKS 40, that part of property, plant and equipment which are intended to be rental to others, that is nonetheless the land and building, they have to be classified as investment property. Not all. There would be some other items kept for rental purposes, maybe generators or any other caterpillars, just for rental purposes. Sometimes, or you may have some office space as well, within which part maybe rent. But when it comes, so office cannot be taken because that goes under the investment property. Other than land and building, if there is anything that would be rented out, can be taken as investment property. However, rather than for use in the production. ඒක අපි නිෂ්පාදන ක්‍රියාවලිය යොදා ගන්නේ නැහැ. For services or for administrative purposes. ඒ කියන්නේ property plant and equipment වැඩේට කරන්නේ නැති ඒවා තමයි මේකට ගන්න පුළුවන්. And sell in the ordinary course of business. You do not have any idea of selling them in the ordinary course of business. You have caterpillars to rent out, then that is an investment property, but you have caterpillars just to sell, then it becomes inventory. A recognition of an investment property are measured at cost. Property plant and වගේම තමයි යන්නේ. And recognition of an item measured using cost model or fair value model. දැන් මෙතෙන්දී revaluation කියන එක මම වෙනුවට fair value භාවිත කරනවා. දැන් මතක තියාගන්න. දැන් මේ දෙකෙන්ම fair value model එක. අතන revaluation කියන්නේ fair value තමයි. නමුත් property plant and equipment වල fair value හොයන process එකට කියන්නේ අපි revalue කරනවා. ඇයි ඒ? ඒක business world එකේ තියෙන වචනයක්. අපි දේපලක් revalue කරනවා. ඒකට ඉන්නවා valuers ලා. valuers ලාගේ job එක. ඒ නිසා තමයි අපි ඒකට කියන්නේ revaluation. ඒතකොට මෙතෙන්දි property land and building තමයි තියෙන්නේ. මේක අපි revalue කරන්න යන්නේ. මොකද revalue කරන්න ගියොත් මේක වෙනම process එකක්. හැබැයි fair value එකට ගන්නේ based on the market. ඒ නිසා ඒ කියන්නේ revaluation එකම තමයි. But it is defined differently because it does not come within the purview of property, plant and equipment. It's a fair value model as explained in investment property. Right, now I will answer to one question he asked. LK16 and identical. Perfectly competitive market because its decisions are getting from both customers and producers here. No, actually, so you can read more about perfectly competitive market. Perfectly competitive market is a market where no single player can influence the price. Who are the players in the market? Mainly there are two, buyers and sellers. Then no buyer, no seller can influence the price. As Adam Smith explained, or just just argued, the price is determined by the invisible hand that cannot be controlled by invisible hand. That is why you should not have an influence. You are negligible buyers and sellers. You have the information, full information about the market, knowledgeable willing buyer, knowledgeable willing seller. With the full information, no deception, with the willingness you engage in the market. So we are producers produce in that way, then the buyers buy in that way, seller buyer. So automatically the price would be highly competitive, become the most efficient one. Whenever one tries to increase it, automatically it comes down because others come into the market and produce. Whenever there are no buyers, so single buyer can't influence the price. Single buyer is immaterial, single seller is immaterial. That is the ideological, the utopian concept. That is why I just told you that is not practically seen in this world, not closer to that. Second question. Lots of things have been asked. If you can ask question by, unmuting the mic, that is better. Otherwise, I may lose some, may overlook some chats. Second point is rentals. LK is 40. The difference. LKS 40 කියලා කියන්නේ මේ 40 කියලා කියන්නේ investment property. හරි. LK 16 එකේ තියෙන rentals කියන්නේ දැන් rental කියලා කිව්වහම අපි කුලියට දෙනවා කියන එකනේ. නේද? ඒක කුලියට දෙන්න පුළුවන් ඕනෑම එකක්. ඒ නිසා අපි property plant and equipment එකේදී කියන අපි කුලියට දීමේ පරමාර්ථයනුත් තියාගෙන ඉන්නවා නම් ඒකත් property plant එක. يعني ඉඩමක් ගත්තා, ගොඩනැගිල්ලක් තියෙනවා, machine එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒක caterpillar එක. ওই තුන වර්ග තුන තියෙනවා. ඒකට property plant and equipment වලට වැටෙන්න පුළුවන්. හරිද? හැබැයි property plant and equipment වල වැටුණත් ඒක building එකක් හරි ඉඩමක් නම් ඒක investment property වලට දාන්න. ඒක property plant and equipment වලට ගේන්න බෑ. ඒතර පැහැදිලිව කියනවා investment property is a property held for rental purposes. ඒක තමයි ඒකේ වෙනස. rental purpose එකට අපි තියාගෙන හිටියට ඒක ඉඩම් ගොඩනැගිලි වෙන්න බෑ. එහෙනම් property plant එක යට තියෙන rental එකට තියාගන්න පුළුවන් property plant and equipment වෙන්නේ අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම machines, equipment ඒ වගේ දේවල් විතරයි. rental purpose. පැහැදිලිද? PPA එක ඇතුළට එන්න පුළුවන් rental purpose එකේ තියාගන්න items වෙන්න පුළුවන් only machines, equipment, vehicles or any other things. Not land and building. දැන් පැහැදිලි නේද? Okay, someone has asked about the capital appreciation. Appreciation කියන්නේ ඉහළ යන එක value එක. So capital කියලා කියන්නේ අපි යොදපු මුදල ඒක අත්පත් කරගන්න. එතකොට ඔයා ඉඩමක් ගත්තොත් ලක්ෂ 10කට මේ දවස්වල ගොඩක් අය ඉඩම් ගන්නවා සල්ලි දෙන ඇයි ඒ? උද්දාමනේ නිසා හිතනවා ඉඩම් මිල ඉහළයි කියලා. එතකොට expectation. So you have an expectation that the price will go up. That is what we call speculative motive as well. Speculative motive. Because of the speculative motive, you buy a land somewhere for 10 million. You keep it. You don't do any business. At 10 million හම්බුණා ලොතරයක් ඇදුනා business කරන්නත් බෑ ඉගෙන ගන්නකම් ඩිග්‍රී කරනකම් 10 million කොහෙද තියන්නේ fixed deposit දාන්නත් පුළුවන් මේක වැඩක් නැහැ චුට්ටි ගානක්. You buy a land. You know that the price will go up. Your intention, it may go up, go down, or maybe constant. So no matter, but your expectation is that it will go up. If you hold it with that expectation, it is an investment. Your expectation is, it is not simple imagination. Expectation is different from imagination. Expectation depends on the given market condition. මූදායින ගහගෙන යන ඉඩමක් අරගෙන නෑ මම එක්ස්පෙක්ට් කරනවා මේක මිල විලයි කියොත් that is not an expectation, that is the lunacy. පිස්සු නේද අපිට එතකොට ඒක එක්ස්පෙක්ට් කියලා යන්නේ නෑ. So you need to have reasons, like so in the commercial places or any other things. So under normal circumstances, if the land is all right, located in a good place, maybe residential or commercial purposes, of course it is likely that the value will go up. Then investment property. Yes, only land and buildings are defined as investment property. ඒකයි මම කිව්වේ accounting purpose මේ ගොඩාක් මේ අපේ තැන්වල ඉගෙන ගන්න පැටලෙවිල්ල වෙන්නේ මේ definitions අපි හරියට කියවලා තේරුම් ගන්න නැති නිසා. මම කියන්නේ property කියන එක ඔබ ඇහුවොත් ඔබගේ property මොනවද? ඒක මම කිව්වා girlfriend boyfriend නම් තමයි property වෙන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. අපි හිතන්නේ ඒක වැරදි. මම කියන්නේ අපි feel වෙනවනේ එහෙම. ඒ මට්ටමට ගිහින් තියෙනවනේ. ඒවට වෙනස් definition නේ. අපි අද තියෙන fixed deposit එක property වෙනවා. රත්තරන් බඩු ටික property. ඒවා day to day language එකේ meaning එක. අර මම කිව්ව එකයි reference එක දුන්නේ recently මේ සම්මත කරපු මුදල් පනතේ තියෙන්නේ property ගැන වෙන කතාවක්. property තියෙනවා රත්තරන් බඩු ඉතින් ඒක ඇස්සේ දාලා තියෙනවා. LKS 40 වලට අනුව investment property includes only land and building. Very easy. ඒතර පැටලෙන්නේ නැහැ. Okay. එතකොට මෙතන තේරුම් ගන්න මේ fair value model එක කියලා කියන්නේ වෙන මොකක්වත් නෙමෙයි. It is the revaluation model, but since the revaluation model is applied for property, plant and equipment, it has specific things because the tangibility, that is why we have revalue. So since the tangibility is not there, we have to think of another fair value model, that is a fair value model. Katarona argue කරන්න revaluation model is something similar to fair value. Actually it talks about the fair value. Fair value is ascertained from a different process. In that particular process, valuers involved. Make it the valuers involved in it, we go to the market. You got it? Land, money in the value karan own taram ministry. So valuers. In the case of investment property, though they are the land and properties, sorry, land and buildings, we do not take the valuation, we go to the market prices. Now, biological assets, LKS 41. Biology, that is the bio is there. The ජීවියෙක් ඉන්නවා, living something. මොනවාද ආයතන වල තියෙන්නේ? Assets. සත්තු, therefore it is defined as a living animal or plant. Living animal or plant, but used for or relate to, not really use, I mean connected to agricultural activities. Then only it becomes biological assets. I can give you a very classic example that I have come across. Someone has asked about shares and debentures as well. Just 1 minute. I'll explain that one after this. Before that, I'll give you an example. This is a real life example when I was covering my article in 1994. I think 1995, between 1995 and 1997. I audited one particular company called Lion Shipping Company. Okay, Lion Shipping. I'm not sure whether that company exists as of now. I came across very strange item when I was doing the audit. That is horses, horses, but categorized under inventories. So then my earliest stage of auditing experience, I had a doubt. My curiosity was very high. My nature is, whenever I see something, I never ever give up. I dig into the depth and find the reality. I question accountants and ask for more details, why it has been accounted like this. And I did not get much adequate information. Then I inquired others, managers, everyone. Then I got the information about how it has happened and why have they keep horses. Because this is a shipping company. That is why I question, what is the reason for you to keep horses for in a shipping company? Then finally I got to know that they had an opportunity of buying these horses at a very cheap price when they were negotiate, like had some discussion with the clients. And in one of the shipments, they had the opportunity to bring these horses without incurring that much that much cost, at a cheap price. But why they bought and imported them? By that time, there was a business, racing business. Maybe the government was considering to have horse races in Sri Lanka. They had an idea of using them in horse races, and do not know whether the business materialized or not. With that intention, they bought. But even by that time, there was a separate accounting standard, IAS 40 by that time, that is agriculture, International Accounting Standard Agriculture. International Accounting Standard Agriculture also allowed to recognize biological assets. So therefore, this is a biological asset, but that cannot go into that particular category. Why? Because that is not being like intended to be used for agricultural activity. That is for horse racing activity, for different purpose. It's a gaming, anything else not defined. So they did not have any help or support to classify the value of horses in another category. They put them under inventories on the argument that no, we keep them for selling purposes in future. If the demand comes, so we are ready to sell them. So that is the argument. You get it, right? Even if you have animals or plants, not for the purpose of agricultural things, it cannot be a biological asset. My example එක හොඳටම ප්‍රමාණවත් ඔයගලන්ට තේරුම් ගන්න biological asset. Time is moving very fast. Capital appreciation means shares. So capital appreciation can happen with respect to anything, even shares, debentures, land, property. But if you buy and keep it, tomorrow the value goes up. Share prices, nowadays you can see these things in the Colombo Stock Exchange. Today you buy at say 25, tomorrow 30, 40, 50, like miracles. No, yesterday also share prices went up drastically. Some shares price increased by 25%, 50% in a day. Can you imagine? Yes, these are miracles happen in Sri Lanka. Right? Wonder of Asia. Wonder of Asia. You will see so many things, huh? Magic. Right. So biological assets, dairy cattle, cows in a farm, that is living animal, trees, the timber plant, lots of tree plantation companies are there in Sri Lanka, but none of them are listed now, because there was one company listed, that is Touchwood Investment, that was liquidated due to many frauds. As of now, none of them are listed, but unlisted plantation companies are there. Sorry, some not timber plantation companies are unlisted, but trees are there, living plants are seen in the plantation companies, listed companies. That is not for timber purposes. The tea plantation, rubber plantation, even rubber plantation, not for timber purposes. So mainly tapping the latex for tea and things like maybe palm oil, likewise. The second one is the biological asset, agricultural activity. The management by an entity of biological transformation. And you can understand, you plant trees and expect harvest. You have farming, cattle farm, poultry farm, or any other farms, whereby you generate different types of products. In the case of poultry farming, maybe eggs, chicken, and all these things. Asset for sale or conversion into agricultural produce or into additional biological assets. Harvest, so very simple thing, you can search the meaning of these things in the internet. Therefore, I am not going to take much time to explain all those things. A good question has been asked. So in a bird park or natural park, how are we going to classify the animals? Do we classify them under just assets? Yeah, that's what we need to think. Actually, we need to look at these things. But one thing is very clear: you can't classify them under biological assets. It cannot be biological assets because the purpose is not related to agriculture. Maybe that is in nature related something. I'm also quite not sure. That's a good question. You better look for this information and find. The thing that I can firmly tell you is that it cannot be biological asset. Should be something else. Maybe even I don't think that would come under inventories. Maybe infrastructure or the cash generating units, something like. We need to check. This is something called learning. So I like these kind of questions. So always develop the curiosity in yourself and question things. Biological assets. Then finally, in addition to these things, you can know, because these are very simple things, need not to explain, right? So natural process, you are not kids, you understand how animals or biological assets connect to other products. You may think a lot. So this is another. This is good for grade 5 student. May pinture dala men apple ga apple gediye use pettiye use bottle කියලා කියන්නේ. Good for grade 5 students. So for you, I think it is not good, but just to show you, සමහරවිට අපි එක struggle කරනවානේ නේද? ඒ නිසා the picture might help you to understand. But philosophy එක පැත්තෙන්, so this picture doesn't help you anything. Just go for to question the definition and think of. So some again examples have been given. Biological assets. It is very clear: sheep, dairy, cattle, and all these things, and agricultural produce, and the products arise due to processing after the harvest. So this is only an example. So likewise, you can think of any unknown item and think of the products. It's very easy. Here, both at recognition and subsequent recognition. So biological assets, so very unique compared to property, plant and equipment and investment property. In the case of property, plant and equipment, cost, after that cost model or evaluation model, or the investment property cost at the initial step, then cost model or fair value model. So different, but more or less the same. But here we do not deal with the cost. We deal with the fair value less cost to sell. The reason is this. So these biological assets are highly susceptible to environmental changes. If something goes wrong, even heavy rains or changes in the weather can change the value. The entire value would be zero. Even a disease spread among these animals would create the chaos within the company. So highly susceptible to the changes, the environment, so the value is volatile, therefore. So best approach recommended in the standard is therefore just go for the fair value. So fair value in a sense, what could be realized in a simple terms, even though we do not use the word net realizable value here, this refers to more or less similar value to the net realizable value, the market price. It's a fair value, we take the market price minus cost to sell. Therefore, more or less the exceptions are there. Bearer plant. Bearer plant is a plant used in the production or supply of agricultural produce. In the production of agricultural produce, some bearer plants. Samanya bearer plants කියලා කියන්නේ බීජ ගන්න අපි තියාගන්න ගස් තියෙනවනේ නේද? ඒවට අපි කියනවා bearer plant කියලා. ඒ වගේ දේවල් තියෙනවා. ඒකේ value එක අර plant එකේ තියෙන fair value එක නෙවෙයි. It is a different, much more higher. But the same way, if something happened, it would become zero. Therefore, the bearer plant is a plant that is used in the production or supply of agricultural produce. That is bearer. So you maintain it. Even seeds ගන්න, ඒ වගේම මේ when other even for generating plantation එකක්, that is also a bearer plant, not only to give you the seeds, but also to generate say continuously coconut plantation that would last for say I don't know 5 year 10 year, that would generate agricultural produce of coconut, then they are considered to be bearer plant. So we move outside of the fair value, we go for some other values, we see what is. It is expected to bear produce over one accounting period. So that is the thing. If you use it for harvest purposes, the fruits, vegetables and all those things, it is not bearer, even though it produces something. But if you go for coconut plantation, that is used more than 1 year, then it becomes bearer plantation. As a remote unlikelihood of being sold as agricultural produce, except for incidental scrap value. So scrap value should not be considered in that case. Unlikely event of sold as agricultural produce. So tea bushes in tea plantation covered by LK16 as a bearer plantation. Of course, tea plantation is used for intended to be used for, I don't know, maybe 10-15 years, then it is a bearer. Coconut plantation. Elephants are belong to hotel and other companies which are not in agricultural sector. Those elephants are not coming under the biological. Yes, you're right. They're not coming into the biological assets. Maybe other items, do not know those things. Maybe disclosed under inventories or any other item. So did you see the category called other non-current assets? Remember, if there is any doubt, item cannot fall into a specific definition, you have the option in accounting and everywhere. It's also that category called other current assets and other non-current assets. Then intangible assets, I don't think that we have time to discuss about intangible assets. we'll stop at that point for today. If you have any question, you better ask. I think I would be able to cover all those things on Monday. I will show you the situation where biological assets here. This is other financial assets. Likewise here, if you want, as you said, mention elephants or any other items which do not fall into these biological assets should come here as other non-current assets. Deposits, other, just see here also, always we have that freedom, other current assets, you see. Maybe if it's intended to be utilized within the operating cycle, could be current there, but it's not inventories, other current assets. You can do that. Simply speaking, other category helps you to absorb anything that does not fall into specific definitions given in corresponding accounting standards. Right, with that, we will stop for today. You need to get ready for the next lecture as well. That will start at 10 o'clock. You will have a break of 10-15 minutes. I think it's a bit challenging to cover up the rest on Monday, but hopefully just Monday, make sure that everyone will log in by 8 o'clock, sharp 8 o'clock. Then I can start at 8 o'clock, and by 9:40 we can finish. Any question? වෙන ප්‍රශ්න මොකුත් තියෙනවද? Yeah, it looks like there are no questions. So thank you very much. Please read the rest of the chapter before attending the next lecture on Monday. Yes, I will take up the next lecture as well. So that is the session assigned to me with you guys. Just let me check. Yeah, B1 and B2. No, I will be seeing you again for the last session, that is revenue. That's interesting. So revenue. So Monday, I will meet you. So thank you very much. See you again. Okay, bye-bye.